Mm, big breath tonight. Um, Tonight I'm going to need some extra help. The reason I say that is because if I can do what I want to do tonight with this video, I will help you understand the formula for joy. And I think that's what I'm going to call this video. When I title it, I think I will call it the joy formula. Now, I realize that I got to go to work now and build a platform under that, or it becomes meaningless to you. And it will be meaningless to you anyway, unless you start to buy into some of the things that I've been saying. I realize you need your own revelation. You need your own revelatory experiences. The purpose of what I'm doing is to just serve as a catalyst to some of that, so that you don't have to go through everything that I went through to get from point A to point B. I don't know how else to say it to make it more meaningful to you. I think the biggest problem that I worry about and wonder about is that you might not realize the depth and the intensity that I've put into understanding what the pure love of Christ is. Now, you'll notice that I've taken down the sign up here that was on the wall, the plaque that listed the 12 virtues that I got from Moroni, chapter 7, verse 45. And in its place, I put an old license plate. I realize all these words read backwards to you, but you can figure them out. Anyway, it's a license plate that I had about years ago when I lived up in Idaho, in Bear Lake West area. Let me just tell you the experience that I had. And I might get sidetracked again tonight and have to come back and finish up another time. I don't know. I am determined to expose this joy formula, because it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful find. It was a spiritual experience for me, another one of those that I had as I prayed and contemplated what the pure love of Christ, charity, was all about, and why it was so critical, why it was more important, why it would never fail us, why it's the only thing that will never fail us. I keep saying that over and over, but it just makes you realize, if you buy into that, how important this word is to understand. All right, let's back up a few years. So I'm living up in Idaho, up in the Bear Lake West area. I've told you I lived up there. I think the Lord wanted me to go there for a few years just so that he could seep into my heart and soul through nature. And that's part of the reason I bring the transcendentalists in, because their theme was through nature. They started to observe some things, and when they were out in nature, I understand why now, because the Spirit just speaks to you in ways that it doesn't other places, at least to me. And I believe it's common. The peace and the quiet, the rhythms, the beauty, the synchronization, the master plan, and the master views and insights that you get in a quiet spot in nature, for me, are just irreplaceable, and I recommend them to you. I have done before. And so the transcendentalists saw that same thing. Emerson wrote his essay, which became kind of the Bible of the transcendental movement on nature. It wasn't a long essay, but the emphasis was, you can learn about God and about your place in the world in relationship to him through nature. You can learn how he works. what his virtues and qualities are. At least get you to a starting point. Well, so with all this emphasis on this word, I'm driving from Bear Lake West down to Paris, Idaho, which is about 20, maybe a little over 20 miles away, for the purpose of getting my car licensed. And I am about 2/3 of the way down there, and I pass a sports utility vehicle, and I look on the plates of that, and it says, I rodeo. And I thought, well, that's interesting. That person who just passed me wanted to let me know what captivated his interest and what held a dear spot in his heart, what mattered to him. To me, he wanted to make a statement about himself, and his statement was, I rodeo. I think you can only get about 7 spots. Yeah, seven letters is all you're entitled to. Anyway, I rodeo worked for him. And as I was driving on down the road after I'd passed that vehicle, I started thinking, what word could I put on my plate that would captivate what I'm all about? I don't rodeo, but it must be about something. And the very first thing that came to my mind is this word that I've been so diligent. Yes, I think I can pat myself on the back and say I've been diligent. And I'll explain why a little bit as we go along here. I might actually have to have a part 2 to this video because I'm gonna get sidetracked enough to not make it work if I don't. But we'll see. So I started thinking, well, what word do I want to put on my license plate? I'm headed to the courthouse to get license plates and pay my fees. And so when I got to the courthouse, I said, I don't want just one of your regular plates. I want to get, they have a name for it. Anyway, it's a personalized plate, like the guy had that was driving the SUV that said, I rodeo. And I got the information. They said it couldn't be more than 7 characters, and you had to fill out a little application, spell it out, send your money in. It cost a little extra money. Send it in and see if it's not taken by somebody else already. So I did that. I went ahead and paid my fees, and they gave me a temporary thing that I could use until my plates came in the mail. And after a while in the mail, sure enough, here they come. Charity. And it's on my Idaho plates. The other colors on the plates are for the sky and the trees, and anyway, red, white, and blue country plates, I guess. But it came, it had charity written on it. I can remember getting it out, and I was pretty happy with it. I was glad that I made the choice. And I'd thought about it while I was waiting for it to come in the mail. I knew that through putting that on my plate, and that a lot of people would say, well, oh, you're just trying to crow about your virtues. Well, no, not that at all. I was just simply trying to bring from obscurity in most people's mind, or rescue from a dictionary definition of what charity is, what the real prominence and meaning of charity really was, because I was coming to know it in a whole different way, and I wanted other people to know it that same way. And I don't know why, but I thought this might be a starting point. If for no other reason, when I got in the car, I'd see it. When I got out of the car, I'd see it. It would be front and center. Little did I know that it would prompt innumerable conversations. People would say, "Oh, charity, huh?" And I would usually respond by saying, "Yeah, charity. You know what that is?" And they would say, from the dictionary definition, they would say, "Oh yeah, that's when you give stuff to people that are in need." Well, I already knew better than that. It's much more than that. Much, much more. The dictionary doesn't even come close to the meaning of charity. Moroni 7:45 is where you find the definition for charity. And I brought it, I had this on my wall, I got it here now on a page of paper. I actually have this particular size. I don't have it right here with me tonight, but I put it in a frame down here at Walmart. They had a frame that just fit that, and I had it made up to that size. And I haven't ever read you what it says on the bottom here, but down here, these are the virtues. And there's not 13, there's just 12. I've talked to you about how two of them need to be combined. But down here at the bottom, I included a few other words, and then I made it into a frame. Well, the words I put down at the bottom are, first of all, it's got charity up at the top. And then under it, it's got this: the pure love of Christ, ... never faileth. Then it lists those 12 virtues. Then at the bottom, down here, I put these words: pray unto the Father with all the energy of heart, that ye may be filled with this love. And then I gave a scripture reference, Moroni 7:45 through 48, and I put that in a frame. I can't tell you all of the experiences I've had with that. I was determined not just to wear it on my license plate, but I was determined to try to get the word out to, in any way I possibly could, to anybody that would listen and care, what charity really was and how it wouldn't fail them, and how you do have to pray for it, and what the real definition for it is, and why it matters, and how it will bring them joy. As it says in the tree of life, which is the love of God, 1 Nephi 11 tells us that. It's the love of God, the pure love of God, the pure love of Christ, who emulates that love perfectly. Anyway, it put me on a journey. I made those plaques up. I would go to Walmart and buy them. They only cost me $3 back in the day. They've discontinued them lately. So I no longer have the frames that are like that anymore, that size. But I made up boxes full of those frames. I can remember when we were up in Lake Town, I took them into the Relief Society room one day, because their motto in the Relief Society is charity never faileth. And I thought, well, that's a good place to start. But I'll bet you if I went in there and asked those sisters what the pure love of Christ was, yeah, they'd say it was charity, because they'd be familiar with the scripture. But if I said, so what is it? They'd say the pure love of Christ. And if I were to say, well, what is that? They wouldn't know. I'm convinced of it. I've asked a lot of people to see what they knew about it. If you ask that second question, what's that? What is the pure love of Christ? Well, Moroni 7:45 has it, 12 virtues. 12, the number 12 in the Hebrew, which has meanings for the numbers in addition to what the numbers mean, means completeness, complete, which is kind of soothing to the soul in a way, even though there's lots of virtues there, 12 of them. It's kind of nice to know that there's not 145 of them. You see what I'm saying? There's just 12. You read through them and you say, well, yeah, 12, that's a lot. Well, yeah, but it's just 12. It's a completeness. Just tackle those 12. As it says, be filled with his love. If you are true followers of his Son, Jesus Christ, he bestows those virtues. And we're to pray that we might be filled with that love. Filled. Well, I don't know about you. I've had this on my mind for a long time. I'm not filled. But I make effort to try to follow the promptings that I have each day, to be a true follower of his Son, Jesus Christ, as it says in the scripture that I just quoted from Moroni 7:45 through 48. If you read through those again, you'll see it. Please open your scriptures and read that, underline it, bookmark it any way you can, and return to it. And these words up in 45. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of my story, so I get this in the mail. I put it on my car, and I make these plaques up and start giving them away. And took them into the Relief Society room and gave them to all the sisters there. I did the same thing in the elders' quorum, or the high priest quorum, which I taught for some time, and gave them to anybody who would take some. And it's interesting because I was involved in a Desert Industries roundup, which is kind of where you put your, I won't say junk, but things that you don't want anymore, you think somebody else might be able to use, is the way you should say it when we gather stuff for the Desert Industries program. And I noticed once somebody had put one of those very same plaques that I had made up, and they no longer had any use for it. It was in the throwaway bin and being sent to Desert Industries for somebody else to use, which is okay. I felt better about that than if I'd have seen it in the trash can. At least they cherished it enough to pass it on. And I would always say a prayer that my efforts in connection with all this, and that's why I say a prayer when I do these YouTube uploads, that my efforts in connection with all of this pertaining to charity might be accepted, and that it might have some longevity and impact because of the efforts that I'm making with the Lord's help, with the Savior's help, trying to show more what his love was all about. I can remember one day, I had them in my cars, my vehicles, I had a truck and a car. I'd put them in little boxes and carry them around. And I found myself sometimes just sitting in a parking lot. Like one day I was sitting in a parking lot, and it kind of surprised me a little bit that it worked out this way. But I was sitting in a parking lot up at the Logan Regional Hospital, which has a pretty big parking lot. And I was sitting there, I believe, if I remember right, I was waiting for my wife with an appointment or going to pick her up. And I was sitting there and I had these, and the thought came to my mind, take one of those out and give it to the next person that comes by. And then I thought, no, not just the next person. I actually want to have, 'em. Some sort of revelatory experience to tell me who needs it, where I should take it. And I sat there, and about 6 rows down, clear over by the highway, almost to the furthest end of the parking lot, a lady got out of her car and started up through the parking lot. And when she got a little closer, I took this out of my box in the vehicle, and I went over here to her, and I had no idea for sure why, other than I just felt like she needed it. Does that make any sense? I mean, am I just being dumb or what? Anyway, I had this impression that no, she needed that. And I handed it to her, and I said, I don't know, I want to give this to you, and I don't know why, other than I've prayed to find somebody that it could be, that would find it meaningful and useful. And you're the person that has come to mind, and I'd like you to have it. She stopped. She looked up at me and kind of a, I wouldn't say a blank stare, but a searching stare into my eyes. Didn't say much. And I just looked at her. It wasn't a long period of time. We didn't stare each other down or anything, but she said, "Thank you." Kind of the same way that I just said it right there. Thank you. Then she took it, and away she went. Put it in her, she had a bigger purse and bag. She put it in there, and away she went. Well, I have no idea what happened to that plaque, where that ended up. Whether that ended up on a wall or not, I don't know. When I did it to the Elders Quorum over here in Cache Valley, I not only in Lake Town, but when I got over here, I took some of these in as well. I didn't have enough of that particular day, enough of the frames to go around it, but I told them how I'd done it, and I showed them what it looked like, and I gave them all one of these papers that I've shown you now, and told them. And I had several come up afterwards and say, "Can I have one of those?" Because I invited them to come up if they felt like they wanted one. And I had several of them come up and later and say that they found a frame that fit, and they've got it on their wall, and it's very meaningful to them. Well, I don't know. This license plate you see up here on the wall behind me, I was going into Burger King one day, the drive-thru, and there was 3 or 4 cars lined up, and I decided I didn't want to wait in the line. I just go into the store, and I pulled up kind of on the side of where the people were in the drive-thru, and some guy leans out of his truck and says, "Charity, huh?" I says, "Yep." And I walked over to his truck. His window was open. The line wasn't moving too fast that he was in. I said, "Do you know what it is?" And he says, "Well, sort of." I said, "Would you like to know more?" And he kind of gave me a blank stare, like, what was I going to do next? And I just told him, I says, "Wait here just a minute." I went over and opened my trunk, because I had the box in my trunk that day with these plaques in them. And I got him a plaque and brought it over and gave it to him. And he looked at me and he said, "I think I'm going to like this. Thank you." Well, I don't know where that went from there. I don't know. I know that I had a good feeling, because I felt like the Lord approved of what I was doing, what I was attempting to do. Just like I have a feeling that the Lord is approving of what I'm doing on this YouTube channel when I speak about charity, though I don't speak about it all the time. The last several lessons, not lessons, uploads, attempts at lessons maybe, thought-provoking discussions, not discussions, presentations. Anyway, I have a feeling that the Lord approves of it. That's the feeling that I have. I was coming through Logan Canyon, and for some reason, I was not paying attention to the speed limit in the upper part of the canyon, and the next thing I knew, a policeman pulled out, started to follow me, and turned his lights on and pulled me over. And he was a nice guy. He asked me if I knew how fast I was going and what the speed limit was right there. I had to admit that I wasn't paying attention really to either one that much. I just driving the canyon. And he told me that I was exceeding the speed limit. And we had a discussion about why the speed limit was different there than it was in the lower part of the canyon and whatever. He was a nice person. And then at the end, he said, I'm not going to give you a ticket. I'm just going to give you this warning that you need to be more careful with your speed. And I said, well, I appreciate you not giving me a ticket. And I'll pay more attention from now on. And he turned and started to walk over to his police car, or back to his police car, and I kind of hollered out my window and I says, hey, wait just a minute, will you? And I got out, and I think he maybe wondered what I was doing, because you hear stories, about people doing things for police officers that you shouldn't do. And anyway, I went back and I opened my trunk, and I got one of those plaques out that were in the box that had these charity words on it, inviting him to pray for that with all the energy of his heart, that he may be filled with that love which never fails. And I handed it to him. I says, well, I want you to have this. And it's not a bribe, because you've already decided that you wasn't going to give me a ticket. That's just that I want you to have it. And he kind of acted a little surprised, like he said, you want me to have it? You want me to have this? And I said, yeah, you don't have to pay anything. It's just something I want to give you. Thank you for what you do. And I gave it to him. I don't know where that one ended up either. I know it seemed to have an impact. Not so much the word, because I don't think he'd gotten into that much yet, just giving it to him, but it surprised him that I gave it to him. About 4 years ago, I went over to Hawaii. I have a timeshare over there, which I'm not sure why. It's kind of like my Bear Lake West thing. I think the Lord just knows I need some peace and quiet, even if it costs a lot of money. I don't know. Maybe I'm making excuses for something that I should be reining in and spending my money better on. I've often thought that. But at the same time, I've received some benefits over there through the Spirit. Just being alone, and with the waves and the water and the moon off the ocean, and with family and quiet times. And it felt good. We'd go to church over there. It was just a little branch. We went several times. This last time, the time I'm talking about, I went, and before I'd gone to Hawaii, I printed up 200 of these charity cards. I knew I couldn't take the plaques. It'd be too much baggage. But I went down and had them make up 200 of those. And I made up my mind before I went over there, because I felt an urge to have them made up. And I put them in my bags, and I thought, I'll find a way. I've got the prompting. There must be a way. I'll stand on the street if I have to and hand them out and see if it makes a difference. I don't know. 200 seemed like a lot. Well, went over to sacrament meeting at this little branch, just a small branch, mostly Native Hawaiians, and they have a sweet spirit about them. And they almost always have missionaries that are going to that branch because they're assigned to that area and that ward, that congregation. And I had the thought when I walked into the building and shook their hands, I'm talking about the missionaries, when I took their hands and shook their hands rather, I had the thought just cross my mind, and the words that came into my mind is, give your cards to them. And that's all it was. Shook their hands, went in, and we had a great sacrament meeting. There was a little girl that talked, a little Native girl that was going on a mission. She just touched my soul. She was so sweet and so humble. Such a lovely daughter of God. And she just melted my heart in the few minutes that she talked, because she was so sincere and so humble, so willing to do what she could do. And when she sat down, I had the thought again, make sure you get those to those missionaries on your way out. Well, I didn't have them with me. They were out in the car in the parking lot by the church. And so when I went out, I passed by those missionaries again. I caught them and told them, I said, I've got these cards, and they're about charity, the pure love of Christ. They list the virtues from Moroni 7:45. I said, I don't know if you're familiar with that verse or not, but they list those virtues, and I told them that I had been on such a meaningful journey learning about that if they could use those to hand out to people that they were teaching or that may be interested in what the pure love of Christ was actually, that I would go out and get those in my car and bring it into them. And they were just overjoyed. They said, oh yes, we can use those. And I felt so good because I felt validated for bringing them over. Something had prompted me. Anyway, I went out in the car and got them and brought them in. There were two packages of 100 and had elastics around them. And they were even in plastic. The place that fixed them up for me had put them in some sort of a plastic wrap. And I gave those to those missionaries. And I just had a sweet, sweet feeling that something good was going to come of that. Now, guess what? I can't tell you whether any good came out of it. I never saw those missionaries again. We went home, and a few days later, and I never saw those missionaries again. The next time I went over there, they'd changed missionaries, and I had no idea. Maybe someday in the hereafter, I'll be able to get some insight into what happened to those 200 cards. Those 200, it's too bland of a term to call them a card. Those 200 items that had scriptures on them. Moroni 7:45 and listed 12 virtues, saying that they would never fail you, and that it was the pure love of Christ, and that you should pray unto the Father with all the energy of heart, that you may be filled with that love. Filled. I've got another video uploaded called All the Energy of Heart that you may want to reference if you want to know what that's all about. Get my insights there. So anyway, and I could go on and on and on. I've done them at Peter, about 30 yards from where we lived, 30 miles from where we lived, 35, well, maybe 30, from where we lived at Bear Lake West when I lived over there next to the forest, and was getting all these vibes from nature. And I had these plaques, and I went down to Montpelier, and there was an Arctic Circle drive-in. I didn't go through the drive-through, but I went in. There was a lady in there that had been there before, and she was a lady that's in maybe her late 50s. And she was a hard worker, you could tell. She was doing everything she could to make that place, make a living for her and her family. And I wasn't familiar with her family situation that much. But when I went in there, I had a distinct feeling that I should give her a plaque, one of these charity plaques that listed the 12 virtues and told about what you had to do to be filled with that kind of love, what that love really was, what it could do for you. And so when she brought my hamburger to me, I asked her, I said, I've got a little plaque out in the car, and I feel inspired to go out there and give you one. Would you take it if I did that? And she kind of looked at me like surprised and said, well, yeah, I guess so. And didn't know what it was, of course. And I brought it back in, and she came over to the bar there where she had delivered my food, and I just turned it around and showed it to her. I said, this is the plaque that I wanted you to have. She looked at the title of it, and she looked at me and got a little bit reflective and kind of smiled. I said, thank you. I have no idea what became of that, whether that lady needed it particularly right then or what, I don't know. I wish I did. I wish I had a crystal ball and could go in and see what happened to all of these that I'd been getting rid of. I shouldn't say it that way. It was kind of sad when I got low on them, and I've got a bunch. They stopped making those frames at Walmart anymore, and the ones that they don't have any like them. And so I was in there one day, and I found some others that weren't too expensive, and I ordered a bunch of them, and I'm in the process now of trying to resize the writing and present it in such a way that it will catch somebody's eye and be something that they can put on their wall or on a desk or something, just to remind them, kind of like this license plate does to some people when they see it. It's been fun because if I drive into a parking garage or something like that, or any place where somebody's trying to tell you to park, I can't tell you how many times they've seen what's on my license plate and they've given me a thumbs up, like, you got it. I don't know what they knew. Maybe they knew some of what I knew. Maybe they knew more. I don't know. But they were on board with me flashing that charity thing around on my license plate. And yet, a lot of people call those kind of plates the iRodeo plates, and different things that you can come up with. that they call them vanity plates. I found out later. In fact, the first person that I told about this said, "Oh, you got a vanity plate, huh?" And I went, "A vanity plate? What's that?" And then they told me that's what people get when they want to show off their stuff. And for a little while, I thought, well, I'd done the wrong thing. I shouldn't have done that, because I'm not an example of charity nearly to the degree that I want to be or need to be. But I still want to promote it. I understand enough about it that I want to promote it. And I know it gives me peace and a good feeling when I do. So I left them on. When they came over here to Cache Valley, I tried to get the same plates with the Utah, because Idaho plates don't work in Utah. I found out. Well, anyway, so I went through the same process and went down. Well, I'd come to find out somebody else has already taken charity in Utah. So I tried to think of a different one that would say kind of the same thing. And what I came up with, I don't have the plate here with me. It's actually a plate that says I, L-U-V, U, and then the number 2. I love you too. I, L-U-V, U, and then the number 2. I love you too. I thought, well, maybe somebody get the idea. Maybe they'll think it's my way it's my way to combat road rage, if nothing else. Maybe somebody will see that on my car and think, that guy, he did something dumb while he was driving, but we'll forgive him because he wants to love us too. I love you too. And I've had a few people make comments about that. Well, I'm not going to go on and on about it. Oh, I have to say this, though, because I'd no sooner pulled it in my garage than my kids come over. And they said, "Oh, you love you too, huh?" And I said, "Well, yeah." I couldn't get charity, so I got the one that says, "I love you too." And see if I can make inroads with that. And they said, "Well, do you even know what that band is?" I says, "Band? Yeah, there's a group called U2. I didn't even know it. I guess I'm stupid or something. I didn't even know it. Well, the next thing I know, I can't remember what birthday it was, like my 70th birthday. I think it was my 70th birthday. My kids threw a little surprise party for me, and I've got a son that's always playing pranks and being silly. At times, anyway. And he had a present wrapped up for me. And so when I got to his present, I opened it up. Well, guess what it was? It was a U2 album. Oh, they have fun with their old grandpa, their dad, and just want to try to make me realize that I'm not very with it, I guess. I said, well, that's not what I had in mind when I bought it. To me, it meant I love you also too. I love you too. Not U2 the band. But once I found out it was a band, then I had to be a little more aware. I was coming out of the bank. And again, I didn't know anything about U2. A lady looked down at my license plate. And she was passing by my car and my window was open. She said, "Oh," she said, she's an older lady, which kind of surprised me that she knew what U2 was, because I sure didn't. But she was an older lady, and she comes out and she says, "Oh, don't you just love that Bono?" And I gave her this blank look like, "Bono? Who's Bono?" Well, I come to find out later that Bono's all affiliated with U2, like one of their main singers or their main singer. I don't know the whole story yet, but it's caused a little stir, and it hasn't worked quite as well as the charity play did yet, but maybe there's hope. We'll see. It's an effort on my part. Well, I'm looking at the time on the video, and the title of my video is changed already because I never even got into the joy formula, which is what this was all about. I've just been telling you the history of charity incidents in my life, I guess. But it's been kind of interesting because it's been fun. It's been fun to reflect back and to see how through just some little things, I've been able to impact somebody's, maybe it didn't impact their understanding of what charity was right off the bat, but I think they knew after I was done that at least I was captivated by that word in a different way than it is in the dictionary. I hope they got that much out of it. And I think in a lot of cases, they got a whole lot more than that out of it. Just like I have through my life. I've come to realize what the pure love of Christ is. And the other thing that I've come to realize or believe is that there's only one definition for love, too. And you're looking at it on the license plate back here, charity. That's the real definition for love. Everything else is a haphazard effort to try to explain something that somebody didn't know that much about. Now, I hope I don't come across as being arrogant when I say that. Because I've kind of become a little bit protective? No, maybe that's not the word. I've become a little bit let me just say it like this. I've become a little bit of a soldier in the Lord's cause to spread what the true definition of charity really is, so that we don't go around thinking that we've got it mastered when we haven't. And that we don't think, and that we don't, and that we come to realize that when we really understand it, there is so much more significance and so many more ways that it can change our lives, never fail us. May it always be you and me and charity. Good night.